Susan Pullen is the founder of True Radiance Healing Arts in Edmonds, Washington. Today I'm talking with Susan about family trauma, dreams, and our intuition. There's a concept of family constellations that Susan talks about that's very intriguing to me and is very centric around the work that she does. Very excited about this conversation. A lot of really cool opportunities for my own personal understanding of my journey surfaced through this conversation. And hopefully there will be some little nuggets for you to follow as well. Hope you enjoy the conversation. We'll see you on the other side. But first, a message from our sponsor. Our healing journey can be difficult and might feel lonely at times. That's why I love sound baths. When we can get together in a community, we intrinsically support and feel supported by others. And that combined energy can help us go deeper into our own healing journeys. And all you have to do is just lay there for 1 hour and listen to beautiful healing sounds. I'm a sound healing practitioner, and I hold sound baths on a regular basis in the greater Seattle area. You can find my next sound baths on my website at adamrealhealing.com. That's Adam, A-D-A-M, Real, R-I-E-H-L, Healing, H-E-A-L-I-N-G.com. adamrealhealing.com. Your healing is worth your time. And now an uninterrupted podcast with Susan Pullen. Welcome back to our show. Today I'm talking to Susan Pullen. Susan is the founder of True Radiance Healing Arts in Edmonds. She's a life coach, healing facilitator, and teacher, among other things. And I'm so honored to sit and talk with you today. Thank you so much for spending time, for separating your time to sit down and talk with me. Susan has a beautiful practice in Edmonds that she's been cultivating for a while now. And there are some things that when I was introduced to you that I was looking through your website and started to read more about you that really kind of triggered me as beautiful things that I wanted to learn more about. And, I think we all, we said this before we started, but we all we're introduced to people as we're ready to feel that knowledge and to expand our understanding. And I'm at a point now in my life, in my healing journey, where I'm starting to look at my family and where I've come from and some of the traumas that I experienced in life. And, outside looking in, I had a beautiful childhood. My parents loved me. They were together. My dad died 13 years ago. My mom just passed away a month ago. I had beautiful, loving brothers. We fought, but we're brothers, we did the sibling thing. And I never really put a lot of, I don't want to say weight, maybe I didn't put a lot of understanding in that could be traumatic in my life until I got to a point to where I realized. And in saying that, I don't want it to sound like I'm placing blame, right? I'm not blaming my family, right? But I understand now that I look back and there are some things that were trauma triggers in my life. When I was growing up, I had weight issues. And I was the middle child. And so my older brother got a lot of attention because he was the first. My younger brother got a lot of attention because he was the baby. So for me, the middle child, I had to hoard the things to make sure I got my share, right? And so, looking back now, I can see where a lot of my weight struggles have come through that, where I was like, no, this is mine. I don't want to share. This is my stuff, right? So I'm going to have the whole bag of Doritos. I'm going to have the whole box of Little Debbie's because I want to make sure I get mine. So that's one thing. And another thing is, even though my brothers, we are children. Children do things that children do. And but there were songs that my brothers used to sing to me about how much I weighed. And again, I love my brothers. I love them and I know they love me. And I know that from the bottom of their hearts how much they love me. But also when we're children, those things sting and we don't really know how to deal with them properly. So we just kind of push them down. And now at a point now where I can look at those songs and I can feel how much they actually hurt me. And getting kind of welled up just thinking about it, But again, I love my brothers and I know they didn't mean any bad things by that, but that's still stuff that we have to unpack as we start to get older to find that healthy balance of life that we need. And so that was one of those things that whenever your name came across my plate, I'm like, wow, that's family trauma, family constellations, healing family trauma. That's a beautiful place that I'm in now where I can understand how that information lands with me. And so long ass intro, just dumping about myself, but thank you so much. I'm really honored to sit and chat with you.
Thanks so much for having me, Adam.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a litany of things that you practice, but first, I love knowing how people got to where they're at. And if you're open to sharing a little bit about your past, I'd love to know how you got to this place to where now you're holding space, you're teaching teachers, and you're really in this beautiful space to helping people get through their traumas. What I find generally is that the most practiced healers have the healing themselves that they've had to accomplish. And so I'd love to hear about your story.
Yeah, thanks. So, let's see. So I've always been a dreamer. I know we were going to talk about dreams today. Some of my earliest memories are dreams. And my grandmother would help me like sort through, find the meaning and the messages in the dreams. So that for me goes way far back.
It's probably like a beautiful memory too, just like having grandma like unpack the dreams with you.
Absolutely.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
we were super close. And I think I've always been really interested in alternative healing. Started reading about things when I was like 12. Had an opportunity to start training in alternative healing in 92. And yeah, like you said, we experience the healing, or we need the healing ourselves. Part of my healing journey, I have been sick, not like, horribly sick, but, sinus issues or whatever, terrible allergies most of my life. And then got a migraine headache that basically continued for 5 years.
Oh,
Yeah, and then improved to where I only had a migraine 21 days a month for another 10 years.
and that's an improvement.
Yeah, that was the improvement.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. So I've really, like, my relationship with my body, so coming from a little different place from yours, but still that finding my way with my body and through exploring many healing modalities.
There's so many out there now.
Yeah. And, and dozens of pharmaceuticals and things like that, which didn't do much for me. But yeah. Yeah. So, and I've also am someone who has always been deeply curious and interested in how people work and how the world works. And so doing the work I do now, especially, I really love how it gives me a deeper understanding for things that are going on in the world. And in my close relationships to things that I hear about on the news, like it gives me a perspective that it's easier for me to stay part of the world.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's that, it's kind of like that bodhisattva idea, where we, in Buddhism, there's the idea of the bodhisattva where, you understand that there's a nirvana. You understand that there's that place that can be reached, and maybe you've even touched it. You maybe had that moment of samadhi where you've glanced at it. But whether you've seen it, experienced it, or just know it is there, you've chosen to be a part of this world to help coach people to understand that there is something bigger and better out there. And that's, and what, when I get to those struggling times in myself of like, why the fuck am I here? Like, there's a deeper reason. And I believe, I do understand that there's an idea that is one of the reasons I'm here, is to help in some kind of way. Right. I know that there's a better place, but we all need to get there. It's not just me and you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. With the healing that you did, let me just backtrack to the migraines. That is insane. So you went from 5 years straight with a migraine to 10 more years after that with migraines roughly 21 days a month.
Yep.
So in your journey, did you figure out why? Like, what was the cause of these? Okay.
No, I never really, from the medical perspective, no.
Okay. All right. I love how you say that. Do you have an inkling as to into your practices and the spirituality that you hold? Do you have an inkling as to like maybe something that might have been causing that?
I got a really good clue, Adam, because when so I was working part-time coaching and doing support work with people, but I still had a day job, so to speak. And when I quit my job and I went to working in my practice now my full-time practice, and at that point I also, you might say, came out of the closet as being woo.
Full woo, folks.
Yeah. Then the migraines went away.
Really?
Yeah.
So so what I'm hearing is that when you fully embraced and stepped into your truth and your reality, your body was like, okay, cool. We can take a deep breath because now we're where we're supposed to be.
Right. We can
Holy
stop
cow.
poking you about getting out of the wrong place and get on with what we're here for.
You know, I've felt my own pokes and prods and my nudges, but I've never been slapped with a migraine for 10 years.
Well, and now you have a glimpse into what kind of the depth of my stubbornness too,
Wow.
Adam.
God, that stubbornness is something fierce. I can feel that. I could empathize with that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you got past your migraines. You are now just holding beautiful space, have this amazing practice in Edmonds.
Yep.
How long have you been in Edmonds for? How long have you been had your practice now?
9 years.
Congratulations.
So, yeah. Thanks. Full time, a little less than that, but yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Was it scary to take that plunge into dedicating your full-time self to this full-time work?
Well, the dreams come in here too, actually, because I was tracking my dreams and what they were telling me, and I was also waiting for the go sign in terms of leaving my day job. So when I stepped into my practice, by the time I quit my job, I knew that if I got to the end of my life, I could have easily stayed in my paycheck producing. I mean, it was fine. There were people there I enjoyed. But if I got to the end of my life and never did the thing, that, like, the cost of that would be unbearably high.
Yeah.
And so I took the risk. I took the leap. I had a lot of support. I mean, I have a wonderful husband who believes in me. And, that, no doubt about it, that makes a huge difference.
Supportive partner is huge, most definitely.
Yeah. And it's funny, when I quit my job, I knew that, so I had closed my coaching practice because I knew that I needed to bring in more of the spiritual component. And when I gave notice at my job, I really didn't know exactly what my work with people was going to look like. I had lots of training, so much training. Yeah. I studied everything, but I didn't. It was like I couldn't picture exactly how it was going to go, and by the time I actually started working with people, so I had some lead time between giving notice and actually leaving the job, and all the doors just opened for me. So
I love how that happens.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right. When you make that right move, it's so funny how the doors that you thought would always be blocked are just like flinging open left and right. Like, hey, guess what? Susan's here now. Yeah. Let's do the things.
Yeah.
It reminds me, so when I left my corporate life, I was a corporate manager for restaurants for a number of years, opened restaurants, closed them, built teams, all this fun stuff. And like you said, on paper, looked good. I was progressing. I made money, had insurance, had all the things, the bonuses, all the fun stuff, right? All the boxes that were checked. But I just was so miserable. I was not happy at all. I was drinking too much. I was all this stuff. And I remember I was talking to one of my bosses one day. He was a mentor of mine. and he was one of my original bosses that he just became a dear friend. And I was talking to him about leaving, and I'm like, I just don't know what to do. I've built this up so much, I'm so good at what I'm doing now, but I feel this calling. And he told me, he's like, okay, so let's just fast forward to the day that you die. Okay, so you're at your funeral. You're laying in that casket, cremated, whatever you choose, and everybody around you is saying the beautiful things around you, right? All the things that they loved about Adam. Now, do you think that somebody's going to get up there and be like, man, that Adam Reel, he could really run a fucking shift. He could write a schedule like nobody's business. And I'm like, oh, fuck, man. You're right, because I'm really good at those things, but what the hell does that mean? Like, anybody can be trained to do those things well. I'm not following my passion. I'm not following my heart. And as soon as I was able to shut that door on that life and to open this door in this new life, I mean, there were a couple missteps, balking on my side because I wasn't fully invested. But once I finally did and said, no, I'm doing this. This is all I'm going to do. This is what I'm meant to do. This is where I'm going. Like you said, the doors were like, whoosh, 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 open, 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 all these doors. I'm like, ah. And it's still a struggle. Don't get me wrong. We're our own bosses. We're in an esoteric art where we have to really kind of like sometimes lure people in with the understanding of like, this can really work, but you need to believe too. There's a big struggle with that, but it's a beautiful struggle. I'm so happy with that now. And I'm not trying to like convince people that this is the way to go. It's just offering information. And if the information lands, then you know where to go.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's, it's like, I don't have to like fight to build P&Ls and budgets and all these things that I used to hate. And now I'm just living this beautiful life. Like, my buddy makes fun of me, but I haven't worn shoes in like 3 days. And I'm really happy about that. Like, that's a beautiful life for me now.
Yeah.
So with your True Radiance, are you, I don't want to use the word focus, but our family trauma is something that you guys specialize in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we're not therapists.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the distinction, a lot of people know the term life coach, but they don't really know like what separates a life coach from a therapist. So the key distinction is that we don't diagnose or treat mental illness. But really, most people, they don't need that.
Right.
They don't need the medical model. They need something else. And we have something else to offer. One of the things people say is that they've done years of talk therapy, and talk therapy absolutely has a place. I'm not down on it in any way. But that they get more out of a session doing the work that we do than years of talking about it.
Right. Okay.
Because the work that, what we're working with lives in the body. And talking about it, thinking about it, writing in my journal about it doesn't necessarily get at the experience in the body of it. So... yeah, it's.
I had an experience that statement really lands with me in a beautiful way. So a couple weeks ago, I went down to Sacramento with one of my spiritual mentors, and we did some shamanic training, and did a lot of journey work, and made a medicine wheel, and just had these beautiful moments. And that was my first time to work with the medicine wheel, and I had a moment when I was meditating I sat in the medicine wheel and I meditated in there for about an hour in the evening, and then powerful meditation. And when I was done, I needed to ground myself. Like, I physically needed to ground myself. I was so just up there. And so I stepped out of the medicine wheel and I thanked it, and I sat down right outside of it on the ground and I meditated. And I beat myself up a lot. Like, one of the things that I'm working on myself is I beat myself up a lot about my past. And my ego, for some reason, wants to remember why. It wants to remember. It doesn't just need the lessons. It needs to know the why. It needs to have the memory.
Yes.
And it's like, no matter how much I tried, I don't need the memory. I just wanted the lesson. And so after that meditation, I was grounding myself, and I was gifted this beautiful mantra that basically was, we live today with the lessons of yesterday. Basically telling me, you don't need to know why you know what you know. right? That memory doesn't serve you, but the lesson that it taught you is very beautiful and very impactful. So leave those memories leave those alone, but take the lessons with you, because you don't need to relive the absentee dad that you were to know that you never want to be that again. Mm-hmm. You just need to know that being an absentee dad doesn't fit with you. Right. So be better about that. Just take that lesson and move forward, because, in personal experience, again, like the memories just mess me up so much and bring so much trauma and emotion with it. But the lessons are like, no, got it. Lesson.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Understood.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the tricky part there, Adam, and thank you for sharing that, is that sometimes there's a part of us, and you're probably familiar with the idea of soul loss, but sometimes there's a part of us that's like still living that experience.
Yeah.
And so it's sometimes not just about looking forward instead of looking back, but also collecting ourselves out of those situations, out of those times and spaces, so that we can, move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've assisted in one soul retrieval before, and it was with the spiritual mentor I was mentioning, Holly, and that was flabbergasting. It was flabbergasting. I mean, I played the drum for Holly to give her a place to come back to and to hold space for her, and just witnessing that and just being a witness of was beyond moving. Like, moving is not even the right word for it. It was just emotional. It was ecstatic. It was elating. It was all these things that I just really secured the idea that I don't know anything. Like, well, there goes all that shit.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it was beautiful. The ignorance was beautiful. I was like, oh, ignorance is so blissful. This is so much amazingness. Because when I can admit my ignorance, it opens up so many more doors and so many more opportunities.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So with family traumas, which, we all have them. And I think, do you mind if we just talk about trauma, the word trauma, real quick?
Sure, yes.
Because trauma, one of my favorite books is The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
Right? Very great book. And it introduced me to the idea that there's levels of trauma. Mm-hmm. When I heard the word trauma to me triggers the most violent thing, or the most, just audacious thing that we could possibly think of, like sexual trauma, abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse. But what I now learned and now understand about that, the word trauma, is that trauma can be triggered and can be experienced with no intentions, no ill intentions at all.
Yes.
And what helped me understand this idea is my daughter. Like, my daughter, when she was, let's say, 5 years old, threw a fit in Target, wanted this toy. I'm not going to let you get the toy. It's right around Christmas. You probably already got the toy in your stocking, right? We're not going to do this. She throws herself on the ground, flails around. She's kicking and screaming. She starts hyperventilating. She gets into that point to where there's no return. We're dragging her out of the Target now. We're putting her in the car. She's still... And now I realize that's inadvertent trauma. Right? Now that's some kind of trauma that she's going to have to unpack in her life. Now, I didn't hit her. I didn't physically abuse her. I didn't verbally abuse her. She just didn't get what she really wanted. And that's going to land in a way inside of her as a way to deal with life if it's not addressed, right? And so, in a lot of ways, there's inadvertent trauma that we can be a part of that we didn't insist or we didn't initiate, but it kind of is part of that now.
True. I mean, medical trauma, I think of that, well-intended, and yet can be a traumatic experience. And also just, I mean, I'm sure you know this, but, some things are just super painful, but not necessarily traumatic in that they're not overwhelming. Really, really, really freaking hard, but not overwhelming. So, and that what's experienced as a trauma by one person isn't necessarily experienced as a trauma by another person. So, I think checking our assumptions on that is good. But and so inherited family trauma is when there was a trauma, there was a tragedy, there was more than could be processed in a previous generation, and it gets it gets handed down through the generations. So it lives through my life. I feel the feelings. I have the anxiety. I have the fear. I have the relationship pattern that I'm repeating. I have the losing all my money pattern that I'm repeating. But it really started back potentially a number of generations before us. And that's where I think, to your point, Adam, with, some of your childhood was lovely and beautiful and great. And yet we can still really struggle with something or feel kind of haunted. And it's because it didn't happen in our lifetime.
Right.
And that's, I think, something that's also really confusing for people is like, wow, I have this intense shame, but it's, I didn't do anything.
Right, yeah.
It feels like mine. I'm the one feeling it. It must be mine, but it isn't.
Yeah. It's interesting. I feel that a lot. And something pops into my head with that, because there's this moniker that, generations that came before us are quote unquote tougher or have more grit, right? And I think, when I hear that now with this new information, it kind of makes me think that, like, okay, so it wasn't a toughness. It was maybe an ignorance to the fact that you were experiencing trauma,
or just dissociation.
Dissociation, right? Yeah, totally. Because look at the Great Depression. The Great Depression. There were people that would go weeks without eating. They would stand in these mile-long lines to get a piece of bread. And that was. If we look at that now, and that's traumatic, but if you transport back then, that was just a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so when you start to become, adjusted to this trauma, then you don't see it as trauma anymore, but there's still a very traumatic experience that's happening. If we look at just the way we've been raising kids for the past, say, 100 years, beatings were pretty common until about 30 years ago. I remember getting hit with a fly swatter as a child. That was our punishment, the bell at the fly swatter.
Yeah.
But now, when we if I even thought about hitting my child, I'm sure CPS would just show up. There's these things that change as we grow and get older and get wiser as a species, I guess. But it's still, there is that deep racism, sexism.
Yes.
I mean, Jesus Christ! I just found out the other day. One of the things, my mom just passed away, like I said, a month ago, and we had these beautiful moments of conversations. And she told me that in I think it was 1989, she had to get my dad to co-sign for a credit card. And it was 1989, it's damn near 1990.
Yeah.
And my mom had a job, she had credit, she had all the things that we would say we need, but she still needed a man to co-sign for her because she's a woman.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's traumatic. That was traumatic for my mom, whether she realized it or not. So there's this systemic and family traumas that, as we start to unearth and get wiser and maybe have some more tools in our tool belt to start to manage these traumas, that they're what we would consider just a normal thing is now oh shit, man, that was pretty traumatic.
Yeah. And what we see as a personality trait, or that's just the way I am, or that's just the way our family is, it turns out to be, in some cases, a trauma response or a change that was induced by trauma in our family history.
Yeah.
And now it's just normal.
Wow. So when your clients come in, do they generally come in as an individual, or do you see families also?
Definitely individuals.
Okay.
Yeah. So the work, I just need one person from the family. Yeah. Because, surprise, we're all connected.
Right.
Really connected.
What?
Even more connected than you thought. Then if we have one person from the system, then we have access to, and we do this with a lot of humility, but we have access to basically the energetic field of the family system. And the interesting thing, so one more piece about inherited family trauma. We usually don't know that the physical symptom that we're living with, the emotional pattern that we're living with, the relationship thing that keeps happening, the struggle with money or success, we think it's ours. And we don't have a way, it's not obvious that we're repeating someone else's fate. And so we need a way to make that visible. So family constellation work it's a healing modality. It's a process that helps make those invisible connections visible to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so family constellation, because that's a beautiful term. The first time I've heard it was through you and your website. And so what that basically is like, so thinking about your family members as stars and how we kind of connect to those all in the constellation type of way.
Yeah, I mean, the word, it's a little confusing because we're used to it in terms of stars.
Right.
And it's not really related to stars. But I do think, like, for example, astronomers might look at a pattern that's happening in the sky and be able to tell from what's happening with what they can see that there is something there that they can't see that is having a gravitational effect, say, on the things around it. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of like that because we're uncovering the thing that has a gravitational field in your family.
Okay. All right. I love that. Because there, in family dynamics, there usually is that, like a patriarch, I guess we could call it now, in the time and that we're moving away from. Now, hopefully, it's a matriarch. It's a universal person that's in our family, but yeah, I could definitely see that, and how that, that strong personality, say, could be the dictator of the family, and how things get processed and how things get unrolled. And if there is a stagnation in that person, then that can be either like beneficial or detrimental to the family. Is that something similar?
Well, for sure. I mean, yes, there could be an effect. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Growing up in that environment will have an impact on me. And it might have a different impact on me from my siblings. Because that's another thing about inherited trauma is it's not evenly distributed. and so this is, if I look at my siblings, well, I have a sister, then, we're not the same. And we don't necessarily struggle with the same things. But I might carry more of my father's line. My sister might carry more of my mom's line. And so, along with just being constitutionally different in our soul, what we carry in the family and our role in the family is different.
With so as people start to make progress in this understanding of like what their role is and how they play that part, how I imagine it's difficult for some family members to all be on the same page with this. So is it, let's say, let's take me for an example. Let's say you're working with me and you help me understand something about that. Now, presenting that back to the family, is that part of the process also of like saying, okay, so now I understand my place. Now, do I go to my family and say, hey, look, this is the work I'm doing. This is where I find my place. By no means am I saying like pointing fingers at other people, because, everybody's doing the best they can.
Yes.
And that's one of the things I've learned in my personal journey is that as many missteps as I could see my parents having, they were doing the best they could with what they had at that time.
Yes.
And I hope my kids see the same thing, because I fell on my face many a time with my two girls. So, is that part of the process to try to bring the family into that understanding too? Or is it mainly just for the individual to?
So in this work, we're working on the level of soul.
Okay.
And interactions between family members on a soul level. And so it could be that, my mother isn't alive anymore. It could be that my father's alive, but we haven't spoken in 20 years. It doesn't matter. I can still do the work And it does change something in me for sure. And it changes something in the field. I can't tell you how many times I've done the work with someone and then their family member starts to relate to them differently. Like that relationship changes, even though they didn't go back and say, I've figured this out now, and now I'm going to be like this, and you can be like that. Or, even though there was no obvious conversation between them. But I do think it's powerful that we shift in ourselves. But it also, like I said, things change in the field. There are so many things that I can't explain.
Yeah. And I can relate to that with my personal journey. I've been working on myself for about 12 years now or so. And my two brothers, I wouldn't say don't have interest in this work, but maybe it's just not for them at this point in time.
Yeah.
But and I'm not evangelical with this. I'm not like, hey, look at me, I'm doing all the work over here. Look at how healthy I'm becoming, and blah blah blah. It's just impactful in its own right. And to speak to your point, as I've found this little modicums of peace, and I'm starting to work with that, I've noticed the relationships with my brothers change, and with my mom when she was alive still. I kind of think about how my dad would accept me now, because my dad 13 years ago, I was a vastly different human being. I was moderately tattooed. Now I'm heavily tattooed. I had a corporate job. Now I'm like doing healing arts. So I just have this understanding of like where my dad would think I'm at. But it is interesting as you start to do some work, how that ripple effect inadvertently just kind of happens.
Yes.
The relationships will change because you've let go of something. You've maybe, for me, it was my ego. I let go of the egoicness of like, I am this person. Like I used to always say, oh, I'm not that person. Oh, I can never do that. I'm not that. Oh, I'll always be this guy. That's how I am. But when I've started to be able to release that I am, this is me, oh, that's just who I am, that's just how I'm built, and I start to really look at that, those things change. And then the way that I present myself to the world changes, so the world changes in the way that it receives me.
Yes.
And the same thing with my family. As I start to do that work, it's almost noticed of like, oh, he wasn't triggered by that statement, or oh, look, Adam's not going back for seconds on pizza, right? There's these like mental things that we're all related, so they're going to notice these little things, and that might trigger a conversation, that might spark another an idea for them to reach out to me. But again, like, I'm not saying, hey, you need to do the work I'm doing because it works for me.
So when I work with clients, we're always focused, well, there's one exception, but we're nearly always focused on the client and what they want, or how things might be better for them, or the inquiry of, like I said, is this mine? Is this deep grief mine? Is this sudden fear that my husband is going to die in front of me? Is that mine? And it ripples out. It ripples out to the generations before us, and it ripples to the generations in front of us. So the only exception is if someone has a child who's suffering in some way, and they want to investigate that and see if we can bring some relief, then we don't need the child to physically come and participate.
Okay.
But we can do the work. I mean, it's really because we're working in the parents'
right
ancestral line. So, yeah.
And I appreciate that idea that when we start our healing, we're healing for 7 generations prior to us and 7 generations after us.
At least.
And that's, right. And that was a statement somebody made to me that really like let me take a breath. Be like, oh my gosh, like that lands in a beautiful way, because and that kind of goes back to the conversation we just had, like, again, we're not saying follow me on this healing journey, but when you start doing that work, it ripples out.
It does.
And people start to notice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with family constellations and family trauma, so as you start to unwrap this stuff with the individual, what's the I mean, I don't want to just ask like a blanket question, but like, how does the integration like start to work with all that as you start to unravel some of this stuff with the person?
Yeah. So, I mean, I get all kinds of feedback from people about profound changes. I can tell you a little piece. I don't know if, hopefully I'll answer your question in the course of this, Adam. So for me, there was an element of grief and like fundamental kind of alone feeling. And when I dug into that, and I started looking around in my family history, and I'm someone who I have a lot of knowledge about my family history. A lot of people don't, and there's a little bit of white privilege. There's white privilege in being able to go to ancestry.com or whatever, look up my family, but also just we can do this work even if someone knows nothing about their family history, even if they were adopted, they have no idea who their birth parents were, or maybe their parents were the black sheep of the family, they were cut out and they have no idea, aunts, uncles, grandparents, we're all missing.
Okay.
So anyway, I took this feeling and I started looking in my family history. Where would this make sense? So this is a question that I'm often asking when I'm working with people of like, where would this feeling, where would this fear, where would this pattern make sense? Whose life did it belong to? And so I noticed my great grandmother, her father left the family when she was very young.
Okay.
Her brother, because her mom was now on her own with 3 kids, her younger brother was put up for adoption at the age of like 8.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so adopted out to another family. So now she's lost her father, lost her brother. She eventually marries. They go 9 years before my grandfather's born, and I would lay money on that she lost a pregnancy in there because 9 years with, really before birth control.
Right. Yeah.
That seems unlikely to me.
Infant mortality rate was pretty high back then too. Yeah.
Right. So probably lost at least one pregnancy in there. And then her husband committed suicide. Ooh. And it's like, okay, that is where I'm alone in my grief. That is where that totally makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's like follow those Easter eggs until you just find the right thing. You know? Wow.
Yeah. And then I appreciate what you have been saying about it's not about blame, because absolutely it's not about blame. But I noticed that I had a little bit of like judgment about her father leaving. So her father moves halfway across the country, and her mother says that she's married, but he's just not there.
Okay.
And then she starts saying she's a widow.
Oh.
So I don't know, if she knew that he was still alive, if she just never heard from him again, or what. But anyway, I had a little bit of judgment about, wow, he just abandoned his family and kids. So I took another look, and I noticed that his father, so when he was a boy, his father died when he was young.
Okay.
He was 8-ish. His mother put him up for adoption.
Wow. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's very, not coincidental, but that's a lineage, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So that's the profound kind of thing that is actually so much more common than we realize. And that's the kind of thing that we unearth with people every day doing this work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sure that's relieving in a lot of ways, but could maybe add a little confusion, maybe, to somebody's healing journey. Just like not realizing how deep that stuff goes,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like, wow, this feeling that I've had, this thing I've struggled with, that goes back generations. Or something super common, Like, I didn't feel like I was really able to receive from my mother. I felt like I had to take care of her, or I felt like I had to not need anything from her in order for her to be okay.
Right.
That is so generational. Like, it's just, if you look at the person's mother, well, she didn't have her mother. She didn't have the mothering, the
Right.
emotionally. And then you put her, no, she didn't have it. It just, that's where the inherited piece, I think.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting to see that when you zoom out, to see the patterns that are potentially there.
Yeah.
I can't remember who has said it now. It's just escaping me, but I heard a quote the other day that said, "Random is just a universal law that has not yet been recognized."
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because when you can really zoom out, we're looking at just a small like snapshot of time in the gigantic amount of time that there is the possible. There's potentially a pattern in there.
Yeah.
Wow. That's, and when we start to find these patterns, for me, I was an atheist for a long time. I just didn't believe in anything outside of me. And what I now know is I just never gave enough time and effort to think outside of my own self, to think there was something bigger than me out there. Mm-hmm. But, now I definitely have that understanding that there's vastness outside of me. Mm-hmm. But I would imagine that there's some people that when these dots start to get connected, it can shake their whole world. And to see that there is continuity, that there is a pattern, that it isn't just you, and that there's all of these things that spiderweb out from the same thing that you experienced.
Yes.
In a different way.
Yeah.
And I think I would like to hope that humbles us a little bit, to say like, wow, I don't know shit.
Yes. Right. Yeah. I feel like over and over again, the universe proves itself to be even more creative.
Really. And from personal experience, the moments when I can get out of my own way and realize that I'm not the smartest human, mm-hmm. that's when the real true learning happens for me.
Yeah.
That true understanding of like, okay, put that aside, put your ego, put your understanding of what you think is the world aside, and open yourself up to the woo, right? Like you said, like the mystical, the magical. We're all magical creatures. We've just kind of forgotten how to be magical. Or maybe we just got used to how magical we are, and we're like, it just doesn't astound us anymore.
Yeah. I think there's... So just thinking about sort of microcosm, macrocosm here, mm-hmm. how in our individual lives, a lot of us have handled trauma mm-hmm. and difficult circumstances by going into our heads and out of our bodies and away from our feelings, right? Because that feels safer.
Right.
Culturally, we see that on the bigger scale, right? Our culture is all about the mind mm-hmm. and the intellect. We are so not rational, but look at the news any day.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So not rational. But we have this like cult of rationality, and as a culture, we've really devalued what we've devalued, intuition and all of our other modes of perception. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the other things about family constellation work, so when we're working together, mm-hmm. Then we would have representatives. So if we were working in a group, we would have other people do this. If it was just us working, we might, I see you have some stones here on mm-hmm. your table. So we might work with these stones and say, this big brown one here represents you, and this blue one represents your mother.
Okay.
And you're going to place them in the way that feels true for you.
Okay.
If we have people, you're going to perhaps place them in the room. In relation to each other, the way that feels true. They're close together, they're far apart,
okay.
Right,
mm-hmm.
right. So when we have other people standing in as the representatives in your family system, even though these people have never met your mother. Maybe they've never met you before, but there is something about we are able to tune into what the energy of that soul feels like.
Okay.
And there is an uncanny accuracy to what will come out of that. And it's amazing. But again, it's a lived experience of how connected we are.
Right. Yeah. When you talk about that too, one of the things I've been working on is channeling in a way. I'm still trying to figure out my mediumship, but the understanding that, so let's say I'm trying to channel my mom, right? So my mom's passed, I'm trying to channel my mom. In the past, what I've tried to do is like physically manifest her in front of me, channeling my mom. And what the approach now that I have, that my spiritual mentor gave me, is it's not, you don't need the physical person in front of you. It's the energy of, right? And so what your mom would say, how your mom would react, how all these things about your mom. So instead of like trying to tangibly put her in front of you, you're channeling the energy of how your mom would show up. And so in that kind of way, there's like, we are so energetically powerful that we just don't realize it. Because like to the example you just had, I could channel my dad into this petrified wood that's right here and have an experience that I would understand as being my dad, because it's the energy of, I'm expecting his responses, I'm expecting his side looks or whatever he does, right? The smell of smoke and all the diesel fuel and all this shit that my dad puts out, right?
Yeah.
And so like, and I think that like we sometimes negate that fact of like how powerful we are to be able to channel those energies, and then we just dismiss it as like, okay, cool, that exercise is over. It's like, but no, you just did that. You've just done that. You've just stepped outside of your physical humanity, and you've just tap danced into metaphysics, and it's beautiful. Like, let's continue that journey and continue exploring those ideas and those opportunities, because again, like that's that magic that we just gotten so used to. It's like, oh, that's whatever. That's just imagination. It's your imagination.
Right. I know.
That's your fucking imagination. Like, come on.
I'm so with you, Adam. I tell my students, imagination is our faculty for knowing spirit.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Faculty for knowing spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That lands in a beautiful way. It really does. I love my imagination, and I used to get caught in it so many times, and like, I'm just daydreaming. And now I love imagining talking to my mom when I talk to her. I love imagining talking to my dad when I'm talking to him.
Yeah.
My girls are still very much alive and well, and I still I'll sit and meditate, and I'll talk to my girls every once in a while.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to be able to manifest that energy in front of me. And just say, like, hey, yes, I can call my kid right now, but I also like close my eyes and, hey, she's right there. Like, there you go. How's your day? What's going on? And I love that. So thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. So with that practice of being able to kind of channel the energies and see what those responses are, I'm sure there's probably some very beautiful therapeutic moments that happen there.
Absolutely. Profound.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Very moving. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, with that, and I know you just touched on intuition a little bit, and I can see the passion building up behind you with the intuition. Do you think that kind of that practice helps the person to kind of develop their intuition a little bit more?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I think the practice, first of all, helps us learn discernment for what's mine and what's not mine, or when am I me and when am I not me. I know that sounds like but we are so much more empathic than we realize.
Right.
So much more empathic and so much more connected. And we pick up, if we pick up other people's feelings in line at Starbucks,
right.
Think about the people that you grew up with and shared DNA with, and how easy it is to pick up their feelings. Anyway, so there's that, but also I learn, because it's a very embodied modality, constellation work. I learn another way of getting information, and it's so accessible for people.
Okay.
So I mean, for decades I have wanted to be more intuitive. Right?
Same.
I mean, I spent so many years wanting that. And dreams were my first way into, like, oh, okay, I can have a two-way conversation with my guidance system if I ask for a dream about something, and then here I have a dream, okay, and then I'm going to say this back to it and go to sleep tonight and see what happens. So, I didn't need any like fancy psychic abilities. I just remembered my dreams.
There you go.
Constellation work for me has like exponentially, it's like bodybuilding for the intuition.
There you go. I love that. Get those reps
like
in.
Pumping iron. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so accessible because, most people have a body. So, yeah.
How do you recommend people build, like, strengthen their intuition? Because that's something that I'm really working on.
Yeah.
I've negated my intuition for a long time.
Yeah.
I've talked about this on the show before, but I'm from the South, and in the South, where I grew up in the 80s and 90s, it was very male centric, very masculine, and in a roundabout way, intuition was always talked down about. We don't hear shit. We don't see things. That's women's work. Was what a lot I heard. Intuition is very feminine. From where I grew up. And but counterly, we were always told to trust our guts. Trust your gut, trust your gut. Well, you can't tell me to trust something and then not pay attention to anything else in my body. Like, come on, man. So, but I wasn't able to unpack that until maybe just a few years ago. So in a way, culturally, my intuition has been smushed.
Yes.
And now I'm trying to just finally get all those boulders off and be like, no, you're in there. You're okay, buddy. We can do this together.
Yeah.
And so, like, how would you recommend somebody to, kind of strengthen or move towards an understanding of what their intuition could be telling them? Yeah.
So I think practicing in a like supportive group, practicing with a mentor, who can help you understand how it works for you, because it doesn't work the same for everybody. I think that's super helpful. I think, I do a lot with my students about learning to trust what you're getting. Okay, I'm getting something. Now, do I believe it? Do I act on it? What do I do with it?
Right.
So there's that. And even just, I think that setting the intention of like valuing my intuition and asking myself, what am I picking up about this? When I tune into this, when I sit quietly with it, what am I noticing? What is my knowing about this? Because we get so much information constantly that we just smush, and we override and we talk ourselves out of it. And we say, well, no, my friend says this is really good, so I'm sure it's good for me. Well, no, not necessarily, right?
What I've been noticing about myself is that the first whisper of an idea or an answer or something that pops into my head is generally the thing. But again, like you just said, I'll talk my way out. Oh, that doesn't work. I've tried that before. Oh, blah, 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 whatever. And I'll listen to, and what I now know is my ego is very, very loud, and my consciousness is very quiet. Yeah. And that whisper is that first thing that I'm trying to start to listen to.
Yeah. I made a practice of earlier on. I made a practice of when I would get the little voice, and then I would get the big voice of ego, right? Of no, that's not right. That can't be right, or ignore that. We have a plan and we're doing it.
Right.
Then I would say to myself, to that part of me, thank you. And right now I'm listening to this quiet voice. And I kept doing that over and over. and over and over and over. And over time, it really shifted the volume to where I could hear the smaller voice much more easily. And I didn't buy into the ego so
Right.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, with the ego work that I've been doing, the way that you just phrased that is the way that my ego loves to be spoken to. Thank you so much. Appreciate your input. We're going to go this way though. Because when I've tried to pry my ego away,
Yeah.
or the old
Good
saying
luck
of
with
kill
that.
your ego, right?
Right.
Man,
Yeah.
that dude gets so strong and just holds on tight, pleads his case. I'm like, there's no getting rid of this guy. But
Right.
that's it. Every part of us is supposed to be there.
Yep,
As much as
absolutely.
our emotions, right?
Yep.
I love the quote that all emotions are okay, all behaviors are not. Because when we take the time to feel our emotions, they don't sneak around and become those nasty behaviors that pop up whenever we get triggered.
Yeah.
So if I can invite my anxiety in to sit next to me and say, hey, anxiety, what message do you have for me? Instead of constantly pushing it away and being scared of and angry at and afraid of,
Yeah.
no, I don't want you, anxiety. No, depression, get away from me. Well, depression might have a very important information for you, a message, and say, hey, this is why you need to slow down for right now and go internal.
Yeah.
So let's hear that message so it doesn't envelop you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That was true for me even with the migraines.
Okay.
Of and it would be the pain level would be variable. So, if it would start to kick up and I would go into oh no, I have these plans and I was going to have to bail out of everything. And, when I started being able to say, okay, this is here. And
yep.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it. A lot of it is the approach. How when I realize now that when my frustration and my ego kicks in and I start stomping my feet, whether physically or in my head, it's going to make things so much worse than if I just understand that, oh, this is today. Okay, this is the way today goes. Yep, I woke up and I stepped in a pile of dog pee. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to start with the shower then.
Yeah.
All right. And it doesn't have to ruin my day. It's just part of the day, you know? And so I think when we can really zoom out and look at those things and it doesn't encompass us.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't have to be the boss of us.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
So so we've been kind of skirting around dreams and intuition and all this stuff, but so with dreams, that's something I'm so interested in, but I cannot tell you. Actually, okay, so I quit drinking almost 4 years ago. And when I quit drinking, it was when I started to realize that, oh, I'm having dreams, I just don't remember them. And I mentioned this earlier before we hit record, but I wake up constantly, at least 3 or 4 times a week. And I sleep great. I have no problem sleeping. I don't wake up in the night and I just sleep. But I'll wake up, and for that first time I wake up, I feel beat down, exhausted. I just Lord of the Rings style trekked up Mordor, was fighting off golems and all this shit, right?
Yeah.
And I just feel this holy cow, what the hell did I just do? I have no recollection, no understanding. In the past, I've done holotropic breath work, right, where you did basically hyperventilate. Yeah. And one of the things that I remembered right before I went into this interesting journey, don't remember it, but is I remember the last breath that I took, and I remember a voice in my head saying, "Hey, you don't need to see what you're about to learn," and that stuck with me a lot, and so I feel like there's a correlation there with my dreams as well, that I'm doing a lot of work in my dreams, but for some reason, I'm not able to see it. And I don't know if that's meant by design, if I'm just not, in a mental place to where I can understand that, if I'll ever be. But I do have to say that I think about it. I do remember actually having a dream of being in a warehouse and just constantly moving through this warehouse, up, down levels, just looking for something. I have no idea what. I don't remember if I was with anybody or not, but I do have this understanding of an industrial warehouse, and I'm just looking for shit. So for somebody that doesn't really understand their dreams or doesn't realize if they are having dreams, where do we start with that?
Yeah. So we've acknowledged a number of times how there's a lot that we don't understand.
Right.
So I think, coming in with some humility here and some, like letting our guidance be the boss of us in a way. So generally speaking, to remember dreams, it's helpful to give ourselves the message that we value it. So that can be like a simple ritual, like having a notepad and pen by the bed.
Okay.
Having a way to capture a dream. And in the morning, if you write down whatever you have. So if you're like, whew, been through the ringer.
Right. Okay.
Then just make a note of that.
Okay.
And it prompts the subconscious, and the other parts of ourselves to say, I value this. I want to, I'm making a space for it,
You're showing intent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend who talks about, you can send your intention to remember a dream into a glass of water, and then you drink the glass of water.
Okay.
Lots of people do dream incubation. I love dream incubation work where I'm repeating a question or a request for a dream as I fall asleep.
Okay.
And I could do that with I will have a dream and I'll remember it. But I hear what you're saying about it may not be right for you to remember it too.
Well, I actually do have a mantra that I say before I go to bed, and it's I want to be a conscious observer of my dreams. And that was something that I read somewhere. It's like, basically what you're saying is like, show the intent that you value the dreams, that you value the message.
Yeah.
And I have not yet started putting a pad and paper next to my bed, which I will. But that, I want to be a conscious observer, I think has started the idea that, okay, we're going to allow you to remember that you're having dreams.
Yeah.
Right. And just let that be the first step.
Yeah.
And let's see where we go from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And just a little bit about like bad dreams. So our higher self or our soul, it wants to give us, it wants to talk to us through our dreams. And if we're not paying attention, then they will turn up the volume. And so even a dream that is like, Adam, look at these amazing spiritual gifts that you have. Look at your purpose. And you're like, it can come out like, I'm trapped in a tsunami and,
Right. Uh-huh.
because I haven't been listening. And if you look at dreams over time, in a series, over nights, over weeks, over months, you will see trends. You will see the same theme once you start to understand it.
Okay.
The same theme comes back, and it will kind of like turn up the volume as it goes. So that's one reason why we might have a bad dream. Another reason is that our ego gets in there and says, like with the example of you have these amazing spiritual gifts. Then our ego, or at the level of personality, we're like, what? There's no way I'm doing that. And then what was a lovely dream turns into, the dark clouds move in all of a sudden, and it's very ominous, and all of a sudden we're being chased by the whatever, and it takes this turn because on that personality level, on that ego level, we're fighting with ourselves.
See, that speaks to me. So in my personal journeys, I've utilized plant medicines to help move some of those big boulders. And so psilocybin is something I sit with maybe like once or twice a year now. And so that, what you just explained, is very much prevalent in my medicine journeys. When I try to fight the thing that I'm scared of or run away from it, it's like, yes,
Right.
Run, little boy, and we'll get you, you know? It's like, oh, shit. But when I turn and I face it and I hug it and offer it love, and offer it a place, and offer it an ear, somebody to listen to, and to let it know that it has a spot, has space in my life, then it's like, cool. All right, cool. Let's integrate. Right. And so that, I guess, waking dream that I have in those moments, that rings so true. That really does. I think that's, I don't know, maybe just looking at it in a different perspective now, the opportunities that I do have to take those plant medicine journeys, I get so much from. Like, I get so many downloads and so much information and so much understanding about myself. Like, literally, like, sitting down in my brain and pulling out volumes and saying, like, okay, Adam, how's your personality today? Like, what do you want to work on? But, it's almost like those waking dreams once or twice a year are getting me through until I'm at a point to where I can acknowledge the fact that I'm having dreams, and seeing the work that's being done on a nightly basis instead of these twice a year or a couple times a year basis.
Yeah.
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 It sounds like, there's a lot of correlation between. I think for me, my big thing is I'm so controlling. Like, I've been such a controlling person, for a long time, and not like, maybe more so in my professional life, and that's kind of carried over into my personal life, because I don't want to be controlling. I don't want to be the decision maker. I have decision fatigue constantly because I'm so used to having to be the decision maker that now I'm like, I just don't want to. I don't care. Like, let's have pizza. Let's have burgers. I don't fucking care. Put them both together, right? Let's have a pizza burger, right? And so I think part of that for me is restricting that brain space when I sleep. But now that I'm experimenting with plant medicines and getting out of my own way and not being the controller, not being the holder of information, the idea maker, whatever it is, that I'm finally starting to unpack some of that in my brain, and the brain is making space to let the control go and to let the etherealness of we as humans start to permeate in there and give me some messages.
Yeah. 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 Totally.
Yeah. So with dreams, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's subtle messages. There's big messages that just smack you in the face. So for yourself, are you an avid dreamer now? You pretty much understand. You wake up and you're like, cool, understood that. Do you lucid dream?
I'm not a lucid dreamer. For me, like you were talking about control, I don't want to influence the dream. I want to be a participant and let it unfold in the way that my higher self wants it to unfold.
Yeah.
That's of more value to me because my mind is all over it in the daytime, right? So I try to just shut up and listen. So there's... I totally lost my train of thought there.
It's all good. It's all good. Talking about dreams. It's all good.
Yeah.
Well, so I think, so with like, I get what you're saying with lucid dreaming, because like dreams they're so mystical and there's a message in there. So if we're controlling our dreams the same way we control our waking life, where's the separation at?
Yeah. And where's the opportunity for our guidance to come in?
Right. Yeah, right. Totally.
Right. Yeah.
I have a friend that's a lucid dreamer, and he loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah. He loves going to sleep. He loves like noodling around in his dreams and all this stuff. And this gentleman lost his son about 4 years ago now. Very sudden. Scott was a beautiful human being. He was in his 30s when he passed, and this gentleman has struggled with it, as anybody would, losing somebody, and so he dreams about his son quite a bit, and has conversations with him and all this. It's beautiful. Love talking to him about it. And I asked him one day, being a non-dreamer, I said, "Well, have you ever gone to sleep with an idea of what you want to dream about?" And he looked at me like I just like slapped him. He's like, "I've never even thought of that." I'm like, dude, you're a lucid dreamer, man.
Yeah.
Like, plant an idea and go to sleep, man. See what happens.
Yeah.
And it's been a while since I've chatted with him, so I don't know. I haven't had an opportunity to check up with him, but like that concept to me I don't know how I would be with that. To have that much control in my sleeping as much as I am my waking. Like, I think it might be fun to play with, but at the same time, maybe want to just like find a way to turn it off?
Well, the dream incubation that we're talking about, where you know, like I've done this, you're making me think of, I wanted to visit with my Aunt Mary, who died some years ago. And I was missing her. So when I was going to sleep, I was saying, you know, would love to have a visit with Aunt Mary tonight. And then I had a dream, and it was about something else. So imagine there's a different plot, you know, some other plot line happening in the dream. And Aunt Mary drives up in a floating minivan,
All right,
and offers, you know, says hello and offers me a ride to where I'm going. And I'm like, it is so good to see you. You know, I love you. So great to see you. And I probably shouldn't take a ride from you because you're dead, but it's really good to see you.
The rational brain's still in there, right? Yeah.
You know, and she went on her way, and my dream continued. So
That's awesome.
So
All right, good to see you, Susan.
yeah. So there's still, you know, we can set the intention and then hand it over, right?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you I've heard mugwort is helpful for inducing dreams. Is that something that
That does work for some people, yeah.
Okay.
Like mugwort tea.
Yeah, or like burning mugwort
Yep.
before. Okay.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
got some friends that are herbalists and they've been trying to, you know, been picking people's brains on how do I remember my dreams,
Yeah.
you know. But mugwort, writing stuff down, you know, those have always been things that people have told me, but I have not found a place to integrate all those into my practice yet. They're exciting for me for about a week or so, and then they kind of just fall off.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. We don't all have to do all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with all that you do, right? You're doing so much right now. You have dreams, the family trauma that you're working with, your practice that you have. Where do you kind of see this coalescing? And do you continue to grow the current practice? Do you have visions of where this can go in a bigger, grander scale? Or
Well, I have a funny story about that. So for me, everything that I do, my personal mission is about being a channel for more love in the world, for love in the world. And embodying that, being a vessel for that to the very best of my ability with all the humanness.
right?
And for supporting others also who want to open the flow of love in their lives. And really that's what I think most of the work that I do, that's what it comes down to.
That's beautiful.
So I was taking a business strategy class this week, which I really enjoyed. I actually like the business part too.
Good.
Although I think it's some of the most intense personal development work you can do is be a business owner.
That's a great statement. Definitely. I understand that.
Right. It'll push all the buttons. It'll bring out all the triggers. Yeah. So, but one of the things for my intuition, one of the things that I have noticed is I get a song stuck in my head. I'll get song lyrics and it's not random, right? It has a meaning to it and often a sense of humor. But so I've learned to listen to that. And, so the other day I had some homework to do. I have all these ideas. I'm a creative person. I always have so many ideas. And so I'm like, I'm going to do retreats and I want to write a book. And actually I have 5 books in mind.
Oh,
So
good for you. Hell yeah.
And I've got the training where I train facilitators. So I have all these things, so many workshop ideas. And so when I think about mapping out where am I going in the business, I have all these ideas swimming around and I'm like, I don't know what to pick or where to focus to do this little homework assignment with strategy on, where I'm going to hone in on. And I was kind of pacing around, swirling around, thinking about this. And I finally sat down on the couch and I picked up my notepad and my pen. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, the song that was playing in my head was every day every day I write the book.
Oh,
I was like,
oh, there you go. You got your answer.
Message received.
Pick one of those 5 books and start writing.
Yeah.
You know, it's so funny you mentioned that. Like, I just noticed myself doing that also. I love music. Music's one of my favorite things. I've been a musician most of my life. Now I'm a sound healer. And this lyrics, you know, just they speak to me, you know. It just, there's certain just things that they might even mean what the artist intended it to mean, right?
Yeah.
And I've recently, within the past probably 6 months, noticed that the songs that are stuck in my head, there's a big message in those.
Right.
And it's not just random. It's not a random occurrence.
Yeah.
And I actually started a Spotify playlist that it's called Infatuation. And they're all the songs that get stuck in my head. I just throw them on that playlist. And now, like, when I go back and look at it, I'm like, oh, God. It's just like a roadmap to my life. It's like all the things that I'm either running away from or wanting to start, or just like all these things in my mind. There's these songs about them.
Yeah.
And the lyrics are very poignant.
Yes. There was one day I was leaving the previously mentioned day job. And I had a little bit of a, mentor or a martyr thing going of like, I work so hard and what would they do without me? And they don't even recognize how brilliant I am. I was in it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I was on my way out of the building, and I as I stepped out the door, I suddenly get, she works hard for the money. And I was like, okay, all right, I get it.
Yeah. Message received. Yeah. Tone it down. I got it. Yeah. Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
And that's synchronicities, there's
yes,
totally. Tapped in.
Totally. And you know what, Adam? So since I figured out, okay, the song is trying to tell me something. So sometimes you probably get this too. I'll get a song, just a couple lines for like days.
Oh, yeah.
Days and days. And I've learned to, at a certain point, if I can't take it anymore, then I stop and I say, okay, I am not getting it.
Yeah.
And I need you to give me this message in a different way. And I swear, it's like changing the channel on the radio. Like that song will fade out and another song will come in. So try it.
I'll have to try
play
that.
I will.
Play
with that.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I love those little trips because like you were saying, our intuition is ours. There's no blueprint for it.
Yeah.
Like I can tell you what's worked for me, but my yes might be your no,
Yeah.
And it's vastly different. So the more we get to play around with it, but also like hearing tips from other people, like what's worked for you. It might not land exactly right, but it gives me something to play with,
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. I've enjoyed our conversation so much.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me,
You're
Adam.
a joy to talk to. I love the enthusiasm that you have. I can't wait to learn more about you. And if there's ever an opportunity for you to come back and there's something you want to talk about, please, open invitation.
Fantastic. I would love to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, love. Thank you so much for joining Susan and I. Please like or subscribe to the podcast. Also, check out the show notes for any links to Susan or what she's doing. Obeisance and love. We'll see y'all next time.